Alright everyone, Bernie Sanders likes to pretend to be like holier than thou, like he's the one who really cares, not like that faker Joe Biden, and not like the other fakers in the race. I've got a long and established track record since the 1970s of being consistently socialistic. And so it's funny because he allowed his staffers to unionize, like the junior staff that helped run his campaign. Now, this isn't like some little tiny volunteer, like the 10,000 people he's got in Iowa. He doesn't pay them; they're volunteers, and that's common to political campaigns. These are like the sort of the intern class, and so they get a 36 grand a year salary. The thing is, if you make them work 50 hours a week, they're not getting $15 an hour. Now, what does Bernie Sanders consistently pledge? We will have a $15 an hour minimum wage, because Bernie Sanders is hoping that people making under that or around that won't notice the economic problem of raising the minimum wage, especially to that level. What'll end up happening is that the cost of goods and services will rise, and so people who are on the bottom will still be on the bottom. They've got a few more physical dollars, but those dollars are worth less than they were before. What you've really done is vampirize the middle class and anyone with investments by devaluing the currency, causing considerable amounts of inflation, which is what you'll have to do, by the way, because you'll need to print literally more physical money on a fairly large scale in order to raise the minimum wage to that level. And so really what you're doing is removing value from the economy. Look, the total amount of productivity in an economy doesn't change magically because you print more money. The money is a representative of the value of that economy, a very small proportion thereof. Each dollar is just a little tiny grain of sand chunk of the giant Sahara Desert that is the U.S. economy. If you print more of it, it doesn't mean that you've created any wealth whatsoever. You've created more notes that relate to that actual physical wealth based on goods and so forth. And this is what socialism denies fundamentally. The principle that, well, you can just print more money. It's like when they say, well, we'll print a few $1 billion and pay off all of our debt, $1 trillion dollars, and then pay off all of our debt to other countries and stuff. It won't work because what you've just done is hemorrhage a giant proportion of your own physical economy in relative value. Now you have to reabsorb things over time. You've hyperinflated the currency. So $15 minimum wage won't work. We can tell that it won't work. It would be a disaster for this country. It wouldn't drive a bunch of multinationalists out of business because they don't have to worry. They'll find ways around it anyway. But anyway, Bernie Sanders, it turned out, in many cases, wasn't technically paying his staffers that guaranteed $15 minimum wage. It was closer to like 11 or 12 because he makes them work long hours. Because it's a salaried position based on a 40-hour work week. So they are unionized, so they went into collective bargaining and they started, yammering about this. Bernie Sanders' result is astonishingly hilarious, which is, oh, well, we'll just cut their hours. We'll make sure that they don't work too many hours so that they make $15 an hour. So basically, you didn't actually increase the wage, you just cut their hours. But the thing is, that's like the most common criticism of socialized or social welfare style, hike the minimum wage, blah, 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 plans is that it'll cause a cut to hours and a cut to jobs. That's literally what Bernie Sanders did. And the hypocrisy of him was even worse than that. But that's what people are focusing on. How funny it is that corroborates the claim about, this particular idea that comes from people like Bernie Sanders every 4 years, that hours would be cut or whatever. That's funny. Even funnier is something that nobody's talking about, which is that Bernie Sanders said, well, I think it's regrettable that they're going to the media. That's not how bargaining is supposed to work. They're supposed to talk in some closed-door meetings, in other words, Bernie. They're not supposed to come out and get egg on your face for being a fucking hypocritical liar, like all other socialists and social democrats so-called are, who don't understand economics. If you understood economics, you wouldn't be a socialist. So, there's the rub. It's very funny. It's kind of chilling, though, I will say this, a little bit dystopian. For a politician to insinuate, some pro-union, well, I'm gung-ho for the working class politician, to then say that people working in his campaign shouldn't be able to talk to the media about the fact that the campaign is literally breaking one of its promises with its staffers while it's still just a campaign, not even in the general election, is a little bit dystopian, yeah. And I would think that some of the Bernie bros will look askance at this and say, well, it's kind of weird. Unfortunately, 99% of them have already made up their mind that Bernie Sanders is the Messiah or something, so you can't change their mind. They're resistant to change. I've seen this, and this happens even with people like, they're Trump fans. And I make a video saying, well, I disagree with Trump on some issue, or he's made a mistake somehow. Oh my God, no, he hasn't. Oh, you're turning into a liberal. I see this like, it's like you stay in the echo chamber, don't put your foot out of it, otherwise you get your toes cut off sort of mentality. This is very common among political campaigns in general, but I think with Bernie Sanders fans, because they are so far left and self-righteous, it's more virulent than anyone else. I think his fans are arguably the most vicious, other than maybe, well, Elizabeth Warren's. Warren's are more vicious. She's got like the queen bee thing going, and so she's got a buzzing hive of busybodies that will basically, they'll call you a racist or a sexist if you step out of line. It's funny, I can imagine the Elizabeth Warren get together. It's the Elizabeth Warren Club, and it devolves into a fucking drunken fist fight probably. What shitty piss beer was she drinking, by the way? Wasn't she drinking a Rolling Rock or some other fucking piss beer, too? Like, she doesn't even have taste in alcohol, so how can we trust her to be the president of the United States? Yeah, I'm so cool. Wow, watch me sip a beer. No, why don't you guzzle 4 or 5 of them, Liz? Then we can talk. Why doesn't she just take a pint of whiskey and straight fucking chug it or something like that? She wants to pretend to be impressive. Bernie Sanders can't even pay his own staffers the right amount without cutting their hours. We're going to cut their hours. That way they will effectively be making $15 an hour minimum wage. So yeah, they just have to work a little bit less. But that's the whole fucking point, is that socialism prevents people from wanting to go above and beyond. There's no reason. If you're going to make the same bland amount regardless of what you do, nobody's going to put in extra effort. This is one of the things that killed communism, and then people would graft a little bit here and a little bit there because of systemic corruption on an unbridled level. It was funny, somebody yesterday said, it's ironic that you can be against state worship but also oppose communism and anarchism. Like, communism is state worship. In the strictest sense, the way that it is pragmatically applied has always been about statism. It has nothing to do with stateless communism. Can't physically exist. A stateless system can't exist. States have already been developed. The concept that you're going to abolish technological progress and go back, you might as well just call yourself a primitivist, number one. And then in the anarchist sense, if you were to spawn such a thing, you get conquested by somebody else who has more organizational capacity. So, yeah, I do oppose anarchism as the mob rule spawning bullshit it is, and I oppose communism as the most bloody ideology ever to exist. Like a religion, it's like, you go through your like atheistic college kid phase, you're like, oh, religion kills a lot of people, but then, if you read more, you realize communism's even worse. Like, people who are literally like possessed by the concept that an invisible man in the sky has commanded them to kill or suffer forever, those ideologies are less bad than this one that was spawned by just an armchair wannabe anthropologist whose theories have been completely discredited and debunked. And Bernie Sanders seems to like communism. There's footage of him enjoying his time in Soviet Russia, that's for sure. Big Che Guevara fan, I suppose. Oh, he did nothing wrong, the CIA killed him. Good. Good. When it strapped his dead corpse to the helicopter, why didn't they feed him through the spokes? Why didn't they mulch his dead body up over the ocean or something like that? They should have done that instead. It would have been a fitting end for someone as bloody, butcherous, and insane as Che. But then again, he'd say the same Pol Pot. Although he got kicked out even by other communists. He was so bad. Pol Pot was the worst. Bernie Sanders is a total fucking hypocrite. Anyone at this point who can't see that is still supporting him. My goodness. What would it take for you to understand that Bernie Sanders is full of fucking shit? People in Vermont, as long as they're being honest, have known this for a very, very long time. He's tolerated here because the majority of the state does what small-town America typically does, just vote for the incumbent forever unless there is a major scandal. Bernie Sanders has never had a major scandal. His scandal is he believes in stupid economic ideologies. His scandal started on day one, and people just sort of said, well, he's kind of a befuddled dude, and he gets fiery, and it's kind of amusing to watch. It's sort of like a court jester sort of thing. And hey, we're Vermont. If we collapse, it doesn't really matter. The country goes on because we're a little landlocked tourist-based state, which is the only reason we keep existing, because we're really good at branding and optics, just like Bernie Sanders. Too bad, but Vermont's not full of shit. Vermont's actually pretty nice, unlike Bernie. That's about all. Peace out.